Hey, so I wanted to talk a little bit. This is what I do when I'm in my car. I travel a lot, so I have nothing better to do than stare at little white dots on the road and stay in my lane and try to avoid getting pulled over for stuff. But now that the full video of what happened in Olmos Park is out and the charges have been dropped, I'm starting to see kind of a disturbing trend among too many people. Not a majority of people, but in my opinion, too many people. And what that is we seem to have forgotten who we are as a society and as Americans and as a group of individuals who are organized under a document that recognizes, not bestows upon us, but recognizes various rights that we have. And these aren't specifically enumerated, although some of them are, and they're definitely not all encompassing or limited. So it kind of depresses me a little bit when I hear people as they watch these videos of my arrest in Olmos Park and Jim's arrest in Olmos Park, that they believe we are the ones that caused that problem. And I see this a lot when I follow patriot groups, whether they're 1A activists or 2A activists or whatever. This mentality that pops up that everything is well and good until a police officer gets involved, and all of a sudden the allegiance from, hey, this is great, look at freedom, shifts. You just need to do what you're told, and you just need to comply, you just need to obey, you just need to listen. And I believe that as a society we have a responsibility to support the government that we put in place, to the extent that that government is operating along the same lines that the government expects us to operate on. The government expects us to follow certain rules, laws, and regulations, provided that they are in line with the Constitution. And therefore, the police and the government should also follow those same regulations that we are required to obey. Now, we are free people. We do not have to worry about, or should not have to worry about, being accosted, having our freedom stripped from us. And we should have the right to be listened to and have our grievances made, provided that we're following within that framework that society has set for us, which is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And also just treat everybody with respect. And then what I prefer, which is the non-aggression principle. I hope to live my life in a way that I never use violence as the first aggressor. I will never be the initial aggressor, but I will always do what I can to stop. If I expect, or if society suspects that I'm able to be listened to, provided I am meeting the social contract that has been laid out through duly passed laws and constitutional processes, why should I not expect that law enforcement does the same thing? Because when I break that compact, when I commit a crime, I no longer have the authority of being a free citizen. I no longer have my authority as an individual who has rights and liberties, because once I infringe on those on someone else, then the social contract theory and the basically what is common law dictates that there are repercussions for that. So likewise, when an official from government, a police officer, acts outside of his authority and exceeds his constitutional, legal, moral, regulatory guidelines, we likewise have no responsibility or duty to follow or obey those laws. Just because someone wears a piece of tin on a uniform that is given to them by a city that works for us, that doesn't mean that they can do just whatever they want. And it definitely doesn't mean that the people have a duty and a responsibility to obey anything whatsoever. And so I bring up this because people say that what happened in Olmos Park, if you had just done what you were told, if you had just gotten on the ground when you were told to get on the ground, if you would have just obeyed their orders. I think back to the Founding Fathers, back in 1773 when all this started happening. And then in 1775, if they had just given up the powder rooms, and they'd have just given up their kegs of black powder, if they'd have just given up their arms and just done what they were told, everything would have been okay, right? We could have just gone to the courts. Well, the courts weren't working. And I've seen firsthand how the courts don't always work here either. But that's not the point. The point isn't the courts, because that's an after-the-fact issue. The issue is, if we allow government to exceed its authority and to boss us around as if we live in a society in which we are ruled by masters, in which we are not free men and free women, that we don't have inalienable rights that are protected by the Constitution, then what is even the point of having the Constitution? If those that argue, people like me, when confronted with a government official who's telling me to do something that I have no moral, legal obligation to do because I'm not committing a crime, then in all honesty, if you think that I'm required to obey, or we as a people are required to obey such orders simply because it comes from the crown, seriously, why do we even have a constitution if you think that police authority exceeds constitutional liberty, individual liberty? It is incumbent upon us. It is our duty as people to stand up to every government official. It doesn't matter if it's a cop or it's a president. We have a duty to stand up to a government official that violates the same laws and standards of conduct that they expect us to follow. When I don't follow the law, or I violate standards of conduct that are established within the Constitution and the laws that are passed under that Constitution, I am held accountable, and things are done to me that, quite frankly, should be done to me if I break a law. So why are the police any different? Why is government any different just because that person wears a badge? We have literally been brainwashed and programmed into thinking that just because someone wears a badge, that person is extraterritorial as it relates to any type of restrictions on their authority and on their power. I reject that wholeheartedly. I will never, when I was in the military even, I didn't just blindly obey orders. There was an incident I had a few years before I retired in which a colonel told me that I needed to, because I was in charge of the brigade's finances at the time and the budget. And that, so one of the company commanders had approved or conducted training that was quite expensive, but did not get the proper approval to do so. Well, I know what the rules and regulations were in the Army, and it was illegal for me, or it would have broken the regulations. It would have violated regulations for me to issue that refund to the commander, because it wasn't approved and there was no exception requested. So I told the colonel, no, sir, I can't do that. The colonel continued to, no, you are going to do that. And I said, no, sir, I'm not going to do that. I am not going to break the law, which, I mean, the military regulation, because some captain didn't. Now, if that captain wants to go and get an exception, and the G8 up at the Corps level brings me that, and I know I'm getting into the weeds here. The bottom line is this: just because someone has authority doesn't mean that their actions are justified and that they have the authority to engage in certain actions. And it's no different with the police. Wrong is wrong. And sometimes you have to take the hard right over the easy wrong. And that hard right means standing up to injustice, even when that injustice is coming from someone that is wearing a symbol of authority, which is a police officer badge. I am not a kill 'em all police kind of guy. I am not a 100% of cops are bad kind of guy. I'm just not. And I never will be. And I'll tell you why. Because even through my Almost Park case, I had many police officers helping me throughout that with information. Police officers that live nearby and police officers that don't. Through my campaign, I had many police officers that supported me. So I know that there are good cops out there. And the problem that we have is that people are more willing to excuse bad cops by trying to point to the good cops. And I get accused all the time of, I don't ever see you posting stories of good things that cops do. And then I go to their page and I don't ever see them posting things about the bad things that cops do, but they're always posting good things. Everybody wants us to worship law enforcement. And if you look at law enforcement as simply another government agency, another government official, which is really what they are, instead of what we're trying to make them out to be, which is this untouchable band of people, we're never going to move past what we've got here. So I'm really disappointed, and I'm really disappointed that there are actually people out there who will criticize those of us that are willing to take a stand and say, no, I won't do what you're telling me to do because what you're telling me to do lacks the authority to do. I have not broken any laws. And unless you can articulate a crime, then I'm not going to obey an unlawful act. I am not a slave. You're not a slave. They are not my masters. They are not your masters. And yes, we have to respect when they are acting under their authority and do those things. But respect is earned. Respect is not just a byproduct of who you are, what you do, what your profession is. Nobody is, and let me backtrack that a little bit. Let me change this. Everybody deserves respect. Okay? Everyone does, until they do something in which that respect is no longer earned. Okay? I respect every single person. I will treat everyone the way that I am treated. So if you come at me with respect, you're going to get respect. And I think everybody should treat everybody like that. And that's why I'm not so supportive of people that just go around cursing at cops and calling them names, because I think respect should be given to everyone until it's not deserved anymore. Even when we're holding them accountable through recording or First Amendment or Second Amendment audits or any of those kinds of things, we should still treat them with respect until that respect is stricken from us. You don't have to kiss their ass. You don't have to like them. I'm not saying you have to like cops and you have to respect that person or that individual. I'm talking about just respecting people. And so that's the thing that I wanted to get out there, is this idea that we're subjects. We're subjects to a crown, and we're subjects to a group, an entity of people who supposedly can just tell you to do whatever you want. And I asked these people, and it's funny, I've never once gotten this question answered. Not once. Not one single time. When people say, the time to fight is not on the streets. Do what you're told and let the courts handle it. Okay, I'm not even going to deal with the whole court issue because that's an after-effect argument. The issue is do what you're told and worry about that later, okay? So what I always come back with is, okay, if a police officer came up to you and said, drop your pants, spread your cheeks, and bend over, are you just going to, quote, do what you're told and worry about it later? Or are you going to say, excuse me, and you're going to fight him? Are you going to resist a police officer trying to rape you legally? I mean, if a police officer has the authority to tell you to get on the ground for no reason, if a police officer has the authority to tell you to drop your guns for no reason, if a police officer has the authority to put you in handcuffs and throw you in the back of a car for no reason, if a police officer has the authority to tell you to turn around, walk backwards, walk sideways, get on your knees, get on your face for no reason, then doesn't he also have the authority to tell you to drop your pants, bend over, spread your cheeks, and prepare for the incoming pencil lead for no reason? And if you say that's absurd, that's obviously outside of their bounds, well then where do you draw the line? At what point do you say, okay, at this point, I'm going to defend myself? At what point do you decide that, okay, now it's worth fighting for? Now the violation of my rights and the violation of their authority has exceeded a level to which I am now comfortable with saying, oh, okay, now you can not do what you're told. Now you don't have to listen. For me, right is right and wrong is wrong. When a police officer makes an unlawful order, I don't care how silly it is, I don't care how minor it is. I don't care that if I had just done this one little itty bitty thing like produce identification, my little 1 minute encounter or my 40-minute encounter would not have been, it would have been just a 1 minute encounter. Any violation of liberty is a violation of liberty. It doesn't matter how small. And if we're willing to give up that little bit, then we're willing to give up a little bit more. And when we're willing to give up a little bit more, we're willing to give up even more. And eventually what happens is you have an issue that starts way over here. This is where you start, right? But you're willing to give up a little bit, like a license. You know, they have no reason to demand your license because you're not breaking any laws. So you give up a little bit. Now you're over here. You've only moved a little bit. It's just a small thing. Why is it such a big deal to give up your license? It's not such a big deal. Well, if a police officer comes up because you're carrying a gun, and you know, how hard is it just to get on the ground? Okay, now we've moved over here. How hard is it just to do what you're told? How hard is it just to, well look, now we're over here. We started way over here. All these little incremental things right here are moving us closer and closer and closer to becoming subjects. So that's why I do what I do, and that's why I push back so hard when people say, I don't understand why you can't just listen. I don't understand why you think that the government has the authority to do whatever they want to me, and that I'm supposed to happily just let them, and then expect or hope that the courts do the right thing. It boggles my mind that there are people out there like you that do that kind of thing. And I'm telling you, you're the problem. You're the reason why I have to fight so hard. You're the reason why all these other people are out there having to fight so hard. We're trying to regain what we've lost. We have lost so much and people don't realize it. There's a reason that people go out there filming the police, because for years, for decades, the police have gotten away with despicable acts, throwing people in jail for no reason, lying on police reports, ruining their lives, and these people sit in jail for 10, 20 years or more because the evidence wasn't there. Nobody was there filming that arrest to prove that the person didn't break any laws. Well, now we have cameras, and now people want accountability. And you can't catch the bad guys if you're not out there watching them. And I'm talking about, when I say bad guys, I'm talking about the criminals on both sides of that blue line. And so I really hope, this is what I want to leave everybody with. I really hope you all that have this mindset, reevaluate how you look at liberty and what it really means to you. Because true liberty is the ability of a person to do literally anything they want. Anything. It doesn't matter what it name something. True freedom and liberty is the ability to do anything you want to do, provided that it doesn't interfere with the right of someone else to do anything they want to do. Does that make sense? So as long as, and that doesn't mean I agree with all these actions, but if it's not hurting anybody, people should be free to do whatever they want to do. That is freedom. And if you're willing to accept anything less than that, then you're willing to accept the incremental destruction of our rights and our liberty. Just because someone's afraid of seeing a gun. Just because, you know what, let me tell you something. Every time, and I'm driving to Dallas right now for some rallies. Every time I get between a pickup truck and one of these little barriers over here on the left, I'm afraid. It scares the crap out of me, especially when they start inching into my lane. And I know there's a lot of truckers that I have friends of, and I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying I get very nervous and afraid when I'm either between two trucks or between a truck and a concrete barrier. It scares me. But I'm not out there calling the police on these truckers to make sure they have licenses and that they're trained and that they can operate on my streets. And I'm not out there asking for these trucks to be limited. I'm not asking for these trucks only to be on the streets when I'm not around, just because I'm afraid of them. We cannot let fear, and we cannot let the emotional, irrational instability of people dictate liberty. If I'm not hurting someone, if I'm not preventing someone else from enjoying their liberties, then leave me alone. That includes the police. I don't care that someone called them. If they show up and they see that I'm nothing more than a man standing on the side of the road or walking down the side of the road with a gun in possession and I'm not pointing at anybody, then fine. If they would have engaged me in that situation would have taken an hour like it did anyway, then sit and watch me for an hour to see if I'm breaking any laws. But and if you want to engage me, but do so politely. Come up to me and have a conversation. Don't order me around like I'm a slave or a servant or a serf. That's how you handle these situations. And thankfully in Texas, 97% of the time, the police do it the right way. When they get a call, they show up and they say, just let you know, we got a phone call. Someone said, there's a man with a gun. You're obviously exercising your rights. You're not doing anything wrong. Is everything okay? And I will say, yeah, everything's fine. And I'll have a conversation with law enforcement. Don't probe me for information, because I'm not going to answer questions, but I'll have a normal conversation with you. If you want to talk about guns, hey, what kind of gun you got there? Oh, I've got a Springfield Armory Saint, whatever. Let's talk guns. But when you start saying, can I get your name? And I understand they can ask, but don't demand. Don't dig for information. Where are you coming from? What are you doing? Where are you going? Those kinds of things. I just don't want to answer them. So, all right, there's my spiel, mostly because I'm bored and I'm on the highway and I'm just driving. I have nothing better to do. So I thought I'd bloviate a little bit, and I'm sure nobody else likes to hear me talk a lot. So I'm going to figure out how to end this without killing myself. You guys take care. God bless. Stay safe. And remember, it's about freedom. We have a choice here, freedom and tyranny. And tyranny has levels, and it starts at the small level. And if we accept just a little bit, we're going to get more. It's my mom used to tell me, and I pass this on to my kids as well, when they say that, it's not that big of a deal. When my kids used to tell me that, I used to tell them, if I cooked you a brownie, one of the most delicious, best brownies you've ever tasted, but I put just a little bit of dog poop in it, just a little bit, you won't taste it, you won't even know it's there, would you still eat it? Would you still eat that delicious brownie knowing that there's just a little bit of dog poop in there? Well, if you wouldn't do that, why would you want to fight for liberty but only accept a little bit of tyranny? My camera off. There we go.